You've already been alerted that some of the coldest air of the season will arrive tomorrow, and as Paul will tell us next, even colder air will follow. In fact, the next week may end up being the coldest of the winter. Actually, that wouldn't be unusual, even though we're already into the middle third of February. Here's a chart I've shown before. I've broken down the time from early December to mid-March into 7-day blocks. I've labeled a few of them with their dates just to get your bearings. So, for example, here's the third week of December, and here's the period from January 12th to 18th. Now, for each of the last 118 winters, I computed the average temperature of these 7-day periods to see which was coldest that winter, and then I plotted it in a frequency diagram. No surprise that the last 2 weeks of January and the first week of February are coldest most often. In fact, that's what happened each of the last 3 winters. But 20% of the years, the coldest week actually came in December. Now, at the other extreme, it's even less common for the coldest week to occur in the latter half of February or early March. That happens about 10% of the time, though in 2 winters, the coldest week was actually in the first half of March. Now, this analysis was for State College, but these general results hold for most places in the state, except near Lake Erie. It's interesting to look at the entire country to see when, on average, temperatures tend to bottom out. That's what this map shows using data from 1981 to 2010, which is the 30-year period used to compute the so-called normals. The green that stretches from the upper Mississippi Valley into the northeast means that the average lowest temperature occurs in the second half of January, in line with what happens in most of Pennsylvania. Though if we close in a bit on the Great Lakes, you see some yellow shades starting to mix in. That means an average coldest time later in the winter, the second half of February and even early March. That's because early in the winter, the open lakes moderate low temperatures. It's not till later, when the water reaches its coldest or freezes over, that the potential to get cold is maximized in these places. Now, if we head south, you see some light blue mixing in. That means an average coldest time a little bit earlier in the winter, in the first half of January. That tendency for the lowest temperature to occur earlier in winter is more pronounced in the western half of the country. The purples and darker blue shades here mean that on average the lowest temperatures occur in the second half of December, in part because these places don't get a snow cover in winter. Snow on the ground tends to make nights colder, which would push the time of year of lowest temperatures later in the winter, when snow cover is more likely. Paul will be back next to tell us just how cold it's going to get in the next week in the extended forecast.